You're listening to Raising Anchor, a Rhode Island FC podcast. We're glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, and this is my co-host, Jason Carey. Jason, how you doing?
Doing good, buddy. How's it going?
It's been a fantastic week. I do have some shocking and somewhat sad news, though, to tell you.
Something I missed?
No, you probably just didn't realize at the time how important it was to me and how I now get to say on this podcast in front of our total of 6 listeners that I'm better than you. I'm officially a Euro snob. I have a Euro team now that I support in addition to Rhode Island FC, and you just need to be okay with that.
You finally found your calling abroad?
Well, I mean, I went abroad, and as a result, I am now better than you because I've watched European soccer live in person.
I see how it is. You go set off a volcano in Iceland, and now,
Listen, things had to get done. Some people, they go to Iceland and they were like, I want to see waterfalls or fjords. No, not fjords, sorry, fosses. They're called fosses there. Love themselves some fosses. Some people go to see volcanoes. Me, I was like, hey, what does the top flight football look like in Iceland? And how can I go get me some action in these games while I'm there? Girlfriend, she's my soulmate when she's like, yeah, we can squeeze in 90 minutes for watching some exciting Icelandic soccer. Nice. So I'm now a fan of, I'm going to say it in English because I'm not even going to do the injustice.
Did you not start the Icelandic Duolingo?
not in time. But Reykjavik FC is my new club. Like all good things, they're like the most winningest side in Icelandic football history. I actually tried to go to a match for Viking FC because that's a must. Timetables didn't work out between the fosses and the volcanoes, so I had to settle, but I'm happy I did because if I'd gone to the Viking game, would have been a loss. Instead, got to see my boys win it. Had to buy a scarf. I'm going to add that to the collection now. Their colors are like Beetlejuice colors, so it's a perfect dichotomy of like the many different scarves I have. But the most important thing here is I now have a potential Champions League team that I've seen in person, which again makes me better than you will ever be.
Well, one day I'll make it across the pond or whatever they say.
When we get that opportunity, I think like we just need to dedicate a week or two and just see everything from like Division 5 all the way to like a Europa game.
Just check live score, like who's playing today.
Go get like 20-pound tickets and just go in and have a blast. But I will say, so to anyone who travels abroad, if you're not supporting local soccer, you're a jerk. And you need to be better than that. So
harsh words.
Just convince your significant others, convince your friends, go see a local soccer game and live your best life, because it is now going to be a staple of any place I go, even if it's just like a high school field and some maybe like people are just kind of sitting there and they didn't even realize they were attending a game. I want to be a part of that action wherever I go. But other than flexing that I went on a cool vacation, what's new with you, man?
I feel like it's been a long work week, one of those kind of weeks where just the time passes by and you're like, where am I? What's going on here?
Is it time to record a podcast? What's going on here? Yeah, no. But I mean, at the same time, I'd rather stumble into a random Thursday like this and, forget that I had to do a podcast with you tonight than to be only Tuesday and go, when am I doing that podcast this week? So I'll definitely take this version of it versus the other way around.
Yeah.
So today, for our listeners, we thought we would continue the journey of explaining our story so far with Rhode Island FC. In the previous episodes, we kind of just talked about the general history of soccer. We moved into USL talk and the convenient timing of the pro-rel conversation that's now starting to take shape in the heart of the league. and we thought we would kind of actually get back to the main character of our saga here, which is Rhode Island FC, which we really haven't talked a lot about yet. I mean, we've mentioned snippets, but like I feel like there's always been something so much more fun to tangent on that.
A little, yeah. We got lost on episode, was it 2.14?
We made a U-turn, did a couple circles and a roundabout, and here we back are. So yeah, so today we're going to focus on really educating listeners on what we know. I mean, we should never call ourselves educators, by the way. We have no right. I've already been sampling the podcast to some of our supporters groups, and they've been correcting me left and right. So we can't ever call ourselves educators in our LinkedIn profiles, but
best we can hope for is entertaining.
I don't think my mom would appreciate if I put professional entertainer. I get some really weird calls from her the next day. But having said that, so we thought we'd kind of start things back with the major players, how we've understood the story and how it's taken shape with the development of Rhode Island FC, and fill in the gaps as we understand it, and as we hope to get closer to the club, and as people that have more knowledge will start roasting us in the comments, can kind of paint that complete picture. Because for some people it's like, oh yeah, I found out when X happened, or I knew all along. But like when you start trying to track down the details prior to, say, 2021, like you see these little tidbits of articles and information in like the 2019, the 2020. Obviously COVID probably did a lot of derailment there. And then like it was like boom, suddenly here's soccer, it's coming to Pawtucket, and just brace yourselves. So we want to try to kind of go back, narrate those important people. Obviously we can't cover everything in what we hope to be an under an hour podcast. That's also another goal we've heard loud and clear from our listeners. Some of you love it because you have a commute that takes you both ways, and some of you are like, you can just end this 45 minutes sooner. So we'll try to tighten that up as well. And then, just kind of break down some of the other things that are probably old news for the diehards that have been following this since day one. But again, we want to be all-inclusive and educate anyone and everyone that wants to come along for the journey. So this may be kind of a bit of a recap episode for those that are much more in the weeds. But before we start.
So like one of the filler episodes in
an anime?
Yeah. Where it's just, I could just skip this one.
Doesn't that usually come like mid-season, not like episode 3?
No,
you got to get the backstory on every single person first.
Really important backstory we got to get in here. Like how did Mr. Parkhurst come into his great ball playing ability?
Come on now. Don't do that. You're better than that. Before we get into those people, I think one thing that we wanted to make sure we start introducing, even though again timeliness it's going to be a couple weeks between then and now, but just so you guys can start to understand how we intend to provide information beyond Rhode Island FC, is let's quickly talk the table in USL. How are my temporary club of El Paso Locomotive Train Gang doing this week? Am I still better than you in your winning bid of RGV?
Train Gang are what are we like, third here in the West.
I'll take it.
32 points, 19 games played.
Who's above me? Who does this train need to run over?
San Antone and Sacktown.
Oh my! Well, the Bears, they got to go down.
There's not a lot of points dividing the top up there, so.
Okay, and that's the West. Who's rocking in the East?
Over in the East, we got Pittsburgh Riverhounds, 38 points. Tampa Bay and Charleston following not too far behind them.
By the way, correction on an episode, because again, we've been getting feedback. I obviously don't know maps very well, because I said that Indy was closer to us than like the next closest after Crapford, and I was educated with a map and equidistant traveling that it's actually the Riverhounds are our next closest threat from approximation, right? Like from distance. So
it's just people don't know about your past. You try and forget your trip to Pennsylvania, so it's understandable.
Well, the Patreon subscribers will one day hear the horror stories of Philadelphia and the 76 cheesesteak sandwiches we ate collectively in the course of 24 hours. But again, that's a story for another time. Okay, so we've got those teams. So I'm sorry, you said who's leading the East? Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And how are they at, like, if this was a true format table?
If it was a combined table, they'd be the top.
Okay.
38 points.
Okay. Plug to Defiance 1636, the supporters group. They have a interesting challenge in one of their Discord channels where you can kind of make bets on who will be the winning team in a matchup for the week. And it's just kind of going to see like how far can you press your luck. So for any of you that want to get in on that, highly encourage it. But okay, so we've got the tables. My team is. Oh wait, what your team was? What, Rio Grande Valley? Where's RGV at?
11th place with 24 points. They get 2 wins. That takes a 30. They could get to like 4th place.
11th place. Isn't that like second to last in the West? Did you pick that team before looking at the table?
Yeah. You said they had a cool stadium, and I was like, all right, let's go with that.
They do. But we also said we would go if they won. So they really need to get their act together this year if we want to see a match.
Maybe it's just not in the cards.
They'll be in the playoffs, but based on that tournament system, they won't get a single game in their awesome stadium. They'll end up playing in like a baseball park for New Mexico United. Yeah. Sometimes
what are you gonna do?
That's the way it is. So, all right. So let's get into this. So the story, as we know it so far, is that this club was the machination and brainchild of Brett Johnson, who we've talked about a couple times now on the pod. And it came to him in a vision of what he identified as the potential opportunity to expand to another USL team. So at this moment in time, it's sometime between 2017 and 2019. He's riding high on his development of Phoenix Rising after he kind of sold his other club into this opportunity to extend into a USL franchise. And he's hungry for more. I mean, if you look at the track record, he's wanted to expand soccer into other areas, or he's wanted to be a part of other clubs like the Ipswich Town thing we talked about. And so, according to Brett, and this was in an old interview I dug up that I hadn't seen too much attention to prior to the actual more formal announcements of Rhode Island FC, is he was in Watch Hill, down south in the state. I don't know, probably having an ice cream, or maybe, like a martini, getting some oysters. I don't know. Maybe he's looking for Taylor Swift. Don't know. And it gets the attention of the fact that the Pawsox have announced that they'll be departing the state. And at that moment, there was like this like lightning rod awakening in him. It's the way he said it in his interview was kind of like in the movie Back to the Future where Doc Brown falls on the toilet and it's like, oh, I've now invented time travel. And
the flux capacitor of soccer.
This is the flux capacitor of soccer. In fact, I'm going to ask him for more details if I get the chance to interview him, because I really am curious, like, because it was such a like glossed over moment. And so he realized that there was no kind of like outdoor sporting event with the Pawsox leaving. And he had already been doing research on where he could expand his own soccer kind of portfolio, and had already identified that Rhode Island, whether this is true or not, I don't know, we'd have to ask Brett, but Rhode Island is actually one of the top 10 media markets for soccer consumption. And that goes beyond like just MLS. According to him, it's all soccer products. It's we have, I'm assuming, avid watchers of like the EPL and the other international kind of activities that go on. And so when he did a cross-reference, I guess, on this media, probably like Nelson's report for consumption of soccer, we were the only club that didn't have, by the geographical boundaries of a state, like a club dependent and exclusive to the state. Everywhere else, whether it was like maybe not in the city proper, but like the state. And again, Rhode Island, when it comes to statistics, is either the best or it's the worst. Like small numbers can make you look good. During the pandemic, we went from having the most vaccinated people to the most deaths like overnight. Like it can flop that fast. So that's where he just comes up with this idea, like, I'm going to bring soccer to Rhode Island, and I'm going to do it in Pawtucket. And so that's literally the entire story. Like, sorry to like build this up as if this was the 45-minute lead, but that is really all we've really learned so far, without having access directly to the front office or to these individuals. So at some point, between this kind of spark and where he goes next, we want to find out. Does that line up for you? Does that sound like it's a real thing, or does that sound like someone who had like a less Hollywood script line, kind of like, well, I want to do this, and this was the place the USL said I could go. Like I could go either way, and I don't really care because I'm getting soccer in Rhode Island. But do you really think he was just like licking a ice cream cone in Watch Hill, staring out at the short line and be like, aha, we need soccer in this place?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you're saying he did some research. He looked at some markets and just saw that this was a good opportunity. And with the Paw Sox moving, it's like there's no other sporting team that's like in the state boundaries. So like, let's do it.
Well, I mean, there are other sporting teams. Let's not discredit
I don't know
the
what
other
you're
ones.
talking about.
They never existed.
They're not
But yeah,
soccer teams.
so I mean, that's not true. So that's the start. But now we have to bring in what I'm calling the X factor. And so we've talked about founder Brett Johnson, but now we need to talk about the other founder, the man, the legend himself.
Ultimate Team legend, Michael Parker's team.
Do you remember what his rating was the last time you used him?
No idea. But like, if when you're playing Ultimate Team, you gotta make an American team.
Oh yeah,
so
you got to have that American synergy. Yeah,
how you do
100%.
it.
I don't know what his Ultimate Team
Probably like
rating was.
68 rated.
Oh, yeah, they no
Silver.
72 silver.
72
Where
silver.
it was gold converted at
Gold
74.
was like 75.
Okay. Yeah, 72 silver Legends pack. I don't know his rating, but I do know when he was in his second stint with MLS, he was one of my main defender pickups in fantasy. I haven't played fantasy in a year just because I've lost time to do that, but he was one of like the most consistent defenders of his era, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. So I almost want to now go back. We can dust off old copies of FIFA, right? We can go back to the Wayback Machine and find out what he rated. Listeners, let us know in the comments what was Michael Parker's rated, and don't cheat ahead of time. Just give us your best guesses. So Michael Parkhurst, I knew of him. He has an insane resume, and I knew the name. I knew he was last attached to Atlanta, but when I did the research, like the true research, this man, he didn't have a golden boot because he didn't exactly score a lot of goals, but man, did he have a golden touch in every organization. Right.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, to be honest. I, knew of him when he was playing for Norshaland. Is that how you say that? I
think it's Norshaland. Norshaland, yeah.
And then, like, honestly, I kind of like lost track of him a little bit, and then it just like, oh wow, he definitely he won some silverware over here.
I'm so glad that your story is you were tracking him in the Danish Super League, and I didn't even know that was a thing that existed, and I was very aware of him on his second return to MLS. So, like, again, this is the perfect yin yang. You're following European connections, and I'm just what's the domestic product, and I'm the real one. So let's go back, because we could say all of his accolades up front, but like let's tell the whole story. So Michael Parkhurst, he grew up. He's a Rhode Island native through and through, born in Providence. Spent time in the youth academies around the state in like CLCF and Bayside United, and ended up playing college soccer for Wake Forest. And in another interview I read, the transcript for, I think he was actually set up to play with Brown, but it just came down to money. It just came down to a scholarship issue. And when you're that age and you've got a full ride potential or a partial ride, you got to go where the money can take you. So he could have ended up playing internally with Brown, and just that didn't happen. So he goes off, plays for Wake Forest, and comes back and ends up joining the MLS in the Super Draft in 2005 with New England Revolution. There's the hometown connection, and he's scooped up in that. Fun fact about Michael Parkhurst that he likes to talk about: he actually was watching the Revs in their inaugural game when the league took place in 1996. So, like, talking about completing the loop, or like the prodigal son has returned. Watched his first game as a young boy, comes to play with them less than a decade later. That's such a rad story. But it doesn't end there. So right after he ends up joining the league in 2005, he becomes the rookie of the year. And like I want to emphasize like this was a time when the league didn't have a lot of stars. So he was shining above like that not international like set of transfers. And I know rookie of the year typically means it's that internal domestic product that's brought up. We're not bringing, rookies from like Syria and stuff like that. But so he just rocks the rookie of the year. And within the next 3 years, the dude plays in 2 MLS Cups. Before he gets Defender of the Year, he wins the Open Cup, and then plays in another MLS Cup. Unfortunately, lost all of the MLS Cups because that's just what Revs do in the finals. But like just the pedigree within 3 years, and this isn't a guy that was on anyone's radar. He was picked up 9th in the MLS the Super Draft, something that today they don't even like. They just go because I think there's like contractual obligations to show up, but they don't care about that. Like, and that's all before he goes to the Superliga, or the Danish Superliga. That's insane. Like, what were you doing when you were that age? 20? Were you playing professional soccer at 20? 21?
No.
Were you even playing professional FIFA, like the video game?
Off the top of my head, math? No.
Off the top of your head, math.
Subject I'm actually supposed to be pretty good at.
Like I guess I say all this because in that era when I didn't get into soccer until he was already like earning these accolades, but it was all about like the Clint Dempseys, the Omar Gonzalez's. Like Michael Parkhurst was not on my radar. Like it just he wasn't there. And the guy went on to win Gold Cups. He participated in the Olympics. And then, like I said, he went to the Danish Superliga, and he wins their version of like the Danish Cup, right? Like not they didn't win the league, but they won the Danish Cup for the first trophy that club has ever won. He shows up and, hey guys, you gotta win something? I can help us win something. I'm really good at that apparently. They win the cup. The next year, they like, hey, what if we just did that again? Wouldn't that be cool? Boom, they win the cup again. And they were like, hey, what if we were actually good enough and won the whole league? And then the next year, they win the whole league. And the crazy thing is, like we talk about like Christian Pulisic all the time today, Michael Parkhurst played Champions League soccer against Chelsea, Juventus, and I think, was it Shakhtar?
Shakhtar Donetsk?
Yeah. They didn't win, I mean, because there is a certain drop-off, right? But, like, how many U.S. players have played Champions League? So I never knew about that.
I mean, it's more now, but yeah, back then, definitely.
Come on. I'm talking back then. How dare you? Don't bring up the post-Klinsmann era of, like, everyone has to be dual citizen and, like, they couldn't cut it in their actual home origin country. Like, don't do that to me. You're better than that. But yeah, so he played in Champions League. I just the pedigree, and it doesn't even stop there. Then he goes on to a stint in the Bundesliga. Again, not a lot of players at that time were playing there. That one was probably the only, like, and I don't call it a blemish if as a defender your team can't win games. Like, it's definitely like, even if you're the best defender in the world,
there's only so much you can do.
If you're not winning games, it ain't your fault. Like, I will stand by that 100%. So he doesn't do so hot there. And then he makes his return to MLS. And this is where I knew him. This is where he shined in my eyes. Joins with the Columbus Crew in 2014. Immediately a captain. Like, leads in the locker room, leads on the pitch. They do pretty good their first year. Obviously, the Revs choke in 2014. They, again, can't win a final. And then the next year with Crew, they go to the MLS Cup in Columbus, had a just ridiculous year, and lose to Portland in the MLS Cup in 2015. If I remember right, that game was the one where a goal got converted because they thought it was an out-of-bounds play, and like everyone stopped except Portland didn't, and the whistle was never blown. So like the guy just ran past a bunch of people and it just put him into a scoring opportunity. Either they had to foul to get there, or like the guy went on to score. It's been a while, but I think that's what happened in that final. So he doesn't win with Columbus, and then in the transition of Atlanta coming into the league, he ends up with Atlanta United and is a part of their MLS Cup victory season in 2018, where he finally won his first MLS Cup. And as soon as he wins that, he's like, you know what? I think I've done everything I need to do in my soccer career, and he retires in the 2019 season. I'm going to ask you, obviously there are players with longer tenures, more stats, but when you look at his entire career, do you think he's one of the most winningest individuals that MLS has ever had, and we're just not recognizing that?
Possibly. It's not something I researched too much, but I mean, looking at, he's got a pretty impressive trophy cabinet there. So he's probably up there.
Do you think it's because we typically don't acknowledge defenders, and so that's why
I think
he's not in the conversation with like Wondolowski, Donovan?
It's not the flashiest, position. So it's necessary, but
you don't need defenders. We've talked about this. You just need 17 attacking players, and you're good.
You play a 2-2-4.
Exactly.
Push everyone up.
Exactly. So anyways.
2-4-1. Yeah, there you go.
And you just surround the goalie. No, nothing else is going to happen. The goalkeeper just says, hey, what are you guys doing here? Just don't mind us. It's fine. So that's him. And so somehow after soccer, he settles down in Ohio, which is I think where he still is today. And he goes, you know what I need to do next? I need to run a USL club. I need to be a part of that legacy, and I need to bring it back to Rhode Island. And so this is why I think he's so connected to, like, I don't think Brett alone could have made this happen. And we'll talk about him in a second, but I think it's, you have to have the not the New England, you have to have the Rhode Island Wonder Boy to be able to pull something like this off. And I think he's the catalyst for that. So we've got Michael Parkhurst now on board, but how did it happen? We still need to find that out. Like, I'd love to know the conversation between him and Brett. But so now we have Brett Johnson, and Brett Johnson has been discussed on this show a couple times now. Whether it's something that we continue to monitor, or if it's something that we know will just work itself out. I'm in the camp of thinking positively here. But so you've got Brett Johnson, and Brett Johnson was a Brown University graduate. So again, he has his roots tied to Rhode Island, and he has this epiphany about bringing soccer to Rhode Island. And we've mentioned in the past that he has this connection to Phoenix Rising, and how he had kind of set up and executed the plan to transition Phoenix Rising into the premier club of Arizona, because Arizona doesn't have any other like major soccer presence because of the consolidation of all of these. And I know I've now researched that he was also a part of the big push to secure an MLS expansion to Phoenix. And I'm thinking that they've probably changed directions. They're still probably going after that, but as a result, I think he's also just kind of looking elsewhere to see where he can make moves as that part gets decided. But I had a realization that we didn't talk about in the last episode. If he still has any kind of controlling interest in Phoenix Rising, isn't that a conflict of interest for the league to be connected to Rhode Island FC?
Potentially. I just don't know what what would. So he's co-chairman and shareholder of.
Dude, in my job we have executives with those titles, and all I know is they sit around and scream at people, and then they play Angry Birds still, or whatever stupid mobile game.
Go golfing with their business buddies, and then.
Well, I don't see them do that because I actually do work at my job, so yeah, I'm not.
I do work too. I don't know.
Oh, I wasn't accusing you. I was just accusing.
Yeah, no.
If the co-chairman who knows me is listening to my podcast, you can't touch me off the clock. I think. I hope.
You will find. But yeah, those positions, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but still, there's got to be. You can't have. I may be the first whistleblower for this club. I may have to go to USL directly and be like, hey, Brett has to be with us, and he's got to let it go. Maybe that'll shore up or free up that $7 million gap we have in the financing, and he can use that money when he sells his interest.
Sell the rest of his shares to Drogba or something.
Exactly, or just sell Drogba to us, and like we can use it. Oh, he can't play anymore, huh? He's like 42.
He's a little too old.
I bet you could still kick a banger from like half. Oh yeah, 100%. So that's something we need to ask. If we get a chance to talk to him, Brett, I want to know: are you allowed to? And if so, when we get to like the finals and it's Phoenix Rising versus Rhode Island FC, are you allowed to even to sit in that stadium wherever it is? Like, do you wear like a half scarf like when they do those like international friendlies and like Manchester United's playing, Philadelphia Union, and it's like that half and half scarf. But so that was really interesting. And again, we've covered Brett a lot already on this pod, so like no surprises. So he worked through his partnership with Fortuitous Partners, which is actually also the group that's really helping bring the Tidewater Landing project into the state, beyond the stadium itself, like the residential parts, the development. I think there's still supposed to be like a hotel project that goes in the Apex Pyramid area. So he's been working through that with his financial investment projects. And then, we have the Ipswich piece too, which we've already kind of covered. So that's Brett in a nutshell. The one thing I was really surprised about is that he is in Los Angeles, which, like, I know you don't have to be in the state, but like founder number 1, Parkhurst, I think is still in Ohio. Founder number 2 is in Los Angeles. So like, is this one of those, like, could this be an absent, like, own? I mean, is a founder an owner? We haven't really discussed that either. Like, would we see them for the big games or for like the social media events? Like, I mean, look what's happening with Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds, right? Like, they thought that would be this kind of thing that we just go a couple times a year, film a documentary, and now they're hooked. Like, it is a part of their like daily process. Like they are screwing up in their regular daytime jobs to put more time and energy into Wrexham. So I don't know. Is that also a red flag? Like, should we be even talking about that?
We'll just have to see how that plays out. I mean, season, when the season starts next year, are they at the first game?
Well, they'll be at the first game. Come on, man. They'll probably be at the first like 3. But it's like once you have that like away game stretch and you forget to like show up to your club and like, it's been 6 months. Where are we in the standings?
Oh, I forgot there was a game today. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out.
But you're playing the safe answer there. I want a better reaction than that. Like, do you think that there's any smoke in having 2 founders who are not going to be local? Like, is that any? Maybe I'm just saying it to be sensational right now, but like, is that an issue, listeners? Is that an issue? Do we need to be worried about that? Is that something that other clubs face and experience?
Maybe, but part of it is just, if we get real for a second, the harsh reality of business, just the way that things are. That it's just transactional, right?
I don't want that to be transactional.
Oh, no,
like,
we
your
don't.
Job,
we're fans.
I know, but they should be too. Like, I will, and I'm sure they are. Like, again, we can't like assume things until we talk and we see the result. But I am like, if you went to your job knowing what you do and your boss just said, okay, I'm going to move across the country, continue to do a great job, and you weren't a fan of your job or your job wasn't going well, like, who watches the Watchmen? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it's so weird. Maybe that's the micromanager in me, that like I would never want to be that far away from like a crown jewel of my investment at that level. And we'll get into the reason that maybe they both feel safe about that. But I don't know. It's a personal vibe. It's a vibe, bro.
I mean, yeah, like I would love them to be like really invested in there, like, like we talked about with Wrexham, those guys just always, hanging out, spending all their time thinking about it. But we're still kind of in that initial build up to the actual, inaugural season. So I'm willing to give it some time to see how it pans out.
So no red flags. Like, when do your red flags start to brew? That's actually a good thing we can talk about later. Is this like mid-season 2024? It's when we go, whoa, you're off the rails. Is it like when there's a problem with the product or the development? Like, where do you think? Because this is the same exercise fans do with their coach. When, like, hey, you've had a poor run of form. Like, do we pull the ripcord after game 3 and be like, hey, you've lost 3 games in a row, you've got to go? Or do we go, hey, give him 3 years and then let's make that decision and really like size things out?
Yeah, it'll be important to see that as like see what their body language is. How are they?
You're gonna stare at Brett Johnson's body.
You know what I mean? How it comes across is when they are questioned about like their interest, the performance of the team, the various aspects of the club, and are they saying the right things? Are they doing the right things? Are they, giving us that impression that they're really interested, or it's just like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. The team I made.
Look what I did. I've moved on to Ipswich Town 3.
They did the thing. They scored the goal.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. And that's, again, like, this is not we're not a fan of Brett Johnson. This is just more of a, when you have that much responsibility, like, you got to take it serious. That's all. I'm sure when I meet him in person and he, says, hey, we can't wait to be you guys' best friends, everything's gonna be fine. But until then, skeptic at heart. But to finish off with Brett, the other kind of key things that I like to say, and you kind of touched on this, Jason, is, he is an investor. Like, first and foremost, he's a businessman. So, this can't be his only project, and it wasn't before, and like Phoenix Rising, that wasn't either. So it does make sense that he has to be wherever it is that he's required to be. And he's a married father. He's got 3 kids, and he's all in on this piece. So the thing that's the most exciting is I found an interview of his in, I think, 2020, and he was talking about how much he wishes we had Pro Rel. And nice. So he was saying this way ahead of like these most recent developments. So I have a feeling, in case people were worried, like, oh, like, how would Rhode Island FC vote on this? Where we've already voted.
Bet it all on black, baby.
We've already betted it all on Pro and Rel. So if it happens, like, we can't sit there later. If God forbid something bad ever happened, like, oh, how did we do this for ourselves? We chose this. We chose this life. So we've made this bed. We have to live in it. So I mean, and it's not gonna be a problem.
It's worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, how delicious would it be if in the first season Pro Rel goes live, we get to put Crapford Athletic into
put them down
second tier, or I guess lower tier.
Yeah, whatever they're gonna call it.
Like, but not in like a like high stakes game for us. Like, we're like completely safe. We're clear, but they're clinging to like life support, and we just get to do that thing where like we put our foot on their face and just go, no, you can't come with us, and just put them down.
Like a 98th minute own goal from them.
Oh my God! Oh, as the prophecy foretold. And again, another feather in the cap of the Pro Rel argument. Like, if we ended 6th for some reason in the season, but we also got to destroy Connecticut.
That's how you start real rivalries, there.
Because remember, guys, #never Connecticut. So we talked about how our founders are absentee founding fathers. Just kidding. But they had a vision, and I think this is the part I'm the most excited to talk about, because they chose a president to run this club who I think you couldn't have done a better job. And they picked up another Brett, President Brett Louis. And I had to make sure several times, and I even asked someone on Facebook that's related to him, because every time there's like slander in the news about the club.
You're already stalking his family?
Well, no, that did not come out right. Brett, I promise. But like every time like there's like local outcry, some of his family, because they're watching it, they want to be proud of their family member. They'll just say like a fun fact about like, actually the product and the project is on track, and if you knew anything about this like these are the interesting details, you should go do. Like, they're never mean, they never flame anyone or anything like that. They're just like, actually. But Brett doesn't. He's radio silent, but his family defending him on the social medias as needed.
Actually, learn to read.
So Brett Louie, fascinating individual. He played soccer collegiately. I don't think I couldn't find anything about like outside of like an amateur career. Maybe he did, and I just didn't see it because there's so much in his information about his like more professional career as a businessman. So he played. He grew up in Illinois, and went to was it Wesleyan? I think it was Wesleyan University. Played as a midfielder, so grew up around the game. And the crazy thing though is he's already been in the USL since 2015. The guy came up in the league, started as a director of like soccer event operations and like kind of like club administration. And he started in 2015, and since then, and remember, the league's only been around since 2011, so he came in like 4 years after, and he put his chips, he went all in on USL, worked his way all the way up to executive vice president in 2021. And so this is the crazy thing to me when people say the stadium will fail. And I don't mean like that local, person who hates paying taxes and thinks that like there's terrible people there are terrible people in the world, but the conspiracy people, right? Like this man did not leave the second most powerful position in the USL to take on a project that would fail. And so for any of you guys that are like, oh, I don't know, this is going to be close, just every night repeat that to yourself. We have Brett Louie, and he wouldn't have come here to see this club fail because he's already given up that role. Like they've already backfilled him, so he'd have to go somewhere else. I'm telling you, like, this is the thing that always makes me the most excited when I know that. And he has a really interesting kind of fun fact about him, but I don't think when I say it, people will actually think it's a fun fact. So did you read in the notes? Did you do your pre-work on his fun fact?
I think I missed that.
So whether you love this or hate this, but we have Brett Louie to either thank or condemn for the introduction of video assistant refereeing in American soccer. He helped work on the initiatives to deploy VAR, as we know it, in the first ever match, and helped make sure that it was instituted and brought in across its like landscape as that season deployed. So, because if people remember, like America's actually revolutionized soccer several times. Like we did the little spray can, like this is where you line up to stand, this is where you like can kick the ball from. And again, whether you agree with VAR or not, and I'll tell you, this season in MLS, VAR has gotten it wrong so much that like maybe this is going to be like on his grave, like Brett Louie, F you, this was VAR. Like, why did you do this? But like he helped. So like again, but that's pioneering something. Like you took a technology that no other sport, no one else in the sport wanted to really adopt or even like look into. And he's like, guys, this is something I'm going to help bring into US. We're going to make this better because it's something that the league needs. So again, I'm looking at that from like a pro rel. He's absolutely probably another staunch supporter of pro rel, right? Like he probably influenced the league to start looking and investigating into this while he was still in charge of it. So I love this guy's vision. I love where he's going with it. He has so many different responsibilities that he's picked up across his tenure in USL, from negotiations, like CBA discussions. He's been like on like the injury and like health and mental wellness boards for not just the USL, but like US Soccer Federation's groups as well. He's helped champion like the Open Cup committee. I cannot see something in this guy's resume that would be like, oh, we could have done better. And anyone that thinks that, like, it's not possible. This is probably the best pickup that we got, and I am just super excited to see that's the direction we're going. What are your initial thoughts on Brett? Second Brett, by the way. This is the Brett Bros. So
Brett number
two.
I mean, it looks like he's got a good CV there. So got some experience. Like you said, he's in a position where like he's not going to let this fail, right? I mean, he's going to make it happen.
What do you think the pressures are on for him, both internally and externally?
Living up to, I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, you can't reverse the question back on me. Would you just play an Uno reverse card on me?
I've been saving them up.
Dang it! I wasn't even prepared for that. I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of internal eyes on him to see if because remember and for the listeners, this club has a lot of different external factors that are being monitored as we are brought into the league. It's one of the most expensive projects that the USL has seen so far, and again, that's mostly tied to the development piece. But there's a lot of eyes to understand if this is going to work, and I don't mean happen. I mean work. Like, what will we be at the end of 2024? Will we be having made a deep playoff run? How will we have won everything? Or did we not get it right from the start? So I think this is Brett's opportunity to potentially build. Like, if you look at what he has there, like he's got league operations, and then now he's got like actual like team play. Like, I could see Brett Louie if this works out well. I could see him literally running a Premier League infrastructure in 5 to 10 years if this works, and that's if he wants to go, right. He may be all in on the USL piece. I don't know that, but if your goals are bigger and everyone has goals to grow, like, what will he be okay with a third place finish in the East Conference in 2024? Will he be caught up in the interpolitics of like the physical building of the stadium, right? You know what I mean? Like, he's never had to do some of these things before, so it's a first step for him. So I don't know how much internal pressure you put on it, and then when a person has that pedigree, I don't know if like our expectations can be rooted in a more like lower bar, or if now we just like, we said we would compete for hardware. That's what all of them have said, but they haven't said win. Like, we would seriously compete. So like, if we don't win if we don't win Open Cup, or if we don't win USL in the first year, like, I don't know. It's why I asked you, Jason. I was looking for the deets from you, but
I mean, it's hard to say with things like this, like, executive vice president, things like that. You have a vague understanding of what they do, but a lot of times,
he
managers
introduced VAR. What are you talking about? Like, you know exactly.
Well, I mean, VAR can be a mystery at times, so it's kind of like, I don't know. Is it gonna be fun, or is it I'm gonna be cursing for the next 30 minutes?
I mean, if it's fun soccer, you should still be cursing, right? Okay. Well, it's more layers we're gonna have to peel back as we explore this club deeper. But I think a lot of the responsibility and the pressure and the expectations will be built up and framed around Brett, who, whether that's the right thing or wrong thing, I think it'll boil down to, if he's successful, the club will be successful.
I mean, it says he's moving here, so at least
he should already.
At least one of our fathers will be here.
Oh, I mean, I think as soon as he got the job, he was looking for a home. So I'd be really curious. He moved here right at like the peak of the like housing crisis, and so I know he could probably afford anything he wants to live in, but it was the inventory. I'm wondering, where do you think Brett Louie ended up? Did he do the whole, I want to live as close to work as possible so I can just walk to work? Is he living in a multifamily in Pawtucket?
I don't know.
Or do you think he got himself some sweet East Side Providence? Not East Providence, but the East Side of Providence. You think he's got one of those ski chateaus or colonial mansions?
Or maybe somewhere in between. I mean, Illinois, maybe, he kind of back to his roots.
Okay. So he's got a farm.
A nice place, maybe with some land.
He's got a farm in Little Compton, and he's just counting his sheep at the end of the day, or his goats. Okay.
A bunch of land, maybe. Nice view.
He ain't close by if he's got a bunch of land, but we'll see. So, Brett, we're really excited that you're on board. We know that you'll lead us to greatness. So that kind of leads us in the ending sections of today's setup is talking about the man who I think's had the most attention on him, and that is Coach Connor Smith, our head coach and general manager. And we're going to do a deeper dive. And it should also be said, if I didn't say it at the beginning, that we want to interviews with all of these individuals at some point and just kind of get more behind the scenes with them and understand like their takes on things and their strategies and visions for the future. But so Coach Kano, I have to start with this. He needs someone in the organization to go up and do a touch up on his like socials, not the socials he's doing. I'm sorry, no, I shouldn't have said socials. On like the information that's been written about him, because when I did the first thing you do is always the Wikipedia search. Someone did not like him on Wikipedia.
Wikipedia did him dirty.
Like,
oh, they tracked his IP address and he did not donate, didn't he?
So yeah, some Euro snob, because there was mostly complaining about some of his stint in England on some of the lower tier soccer over there. Just was like, he was the most inconsistent attacking wing we've ever had, even though he was voted the best player in the first 3 games of that season. He went on to be voted the 49th most hated player of all time. Like it, like I guess that's my Wikipedia reading voice now, but he like it just was like all over the place on him. And like usually, especially after your career's over and people like don't talk about you anymore, like someone would have like, oh, he was super amazing and he had the like best haircut and he had like, I mean, I don't think he has the haircut thing down, but that was a bad way to start that. But like, you know, people go in and touch themselves up
for his lack of hair.
That was shade I should not have thrown. I apologize. But that was the first interesting thing, because like you look at the rest of what he contributed, and you know, he doesn't have like Michael Parkhurst's trophy case, right? But like the man still did.
He's been around.
He did stuff. Yeah,
played for some teams. Yeah.
So he was, you know, born and raised in Bermuda. He was part of the Bermudian national team. I don't remember the amount of international caps he had, but you know, it was substantial. And we kind of joked earlier about like those teams in the Caribbean who they don't get a lot of call-ups because there's not a lot of desire to play clubs like that.
It's tough for them to schedule like friendlies and whatnot. The Nations League actually has kind of helped out with that.
Right. But this is 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, this is a lot newer kind of a thing.
Right. So he played with them, and then, you know, gets called up for the New England Revolution. So there's our first kind of alumni connection, right? Which just shows the oldest adage in the history of the universe. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I am not saying Coach Kano doesn't know things. I'm just saying like it's probably always a benefit to say like, oh yeah, I know Parkhurst. We did some things together. It was a lot of fun. So he plays for New England, bounced around kind of doing some additional things in a bunch of different leagues, had a stint in England, came back, and then after he came back to the Revs, but didn't play for a very long time. I think it was maybe just like, hey, let's see if you could, like what you could contribute to this season. And then, you know, started kind of exiting his career as MLS journeymen do. And that's where he, you know, decided he would get he cut his chops as a coaching opportunity. And again, the really interesting thing in some of the research I did was he started in Orlando City, and there's another connection we'll talk about in a second around some other personnel that's joined the team. So he starts in Orlando City with the Pride, so the women's group. And then he moves into Birmingham Legion FC, and did not know this, but Birmingham Legion is now, the president is Jay Heaps, former New England Revolution coach. So, and I think I may have skipped a step there. Kano did have some coaching ties and teachings and trainings with the Revs in that kind of area and space. So he's working through these groups. He's now with USL. They're on a tear. Like Birmingham played some of their best soccer with him as the assistant coach. And, you know, he goes and looks for an opportunity, and lo and behold, you know, here's a club coming up in Rhode Island where he's very familiar. You know, he played some of his best soccer, knows a lot of the people that are connected to the space, and, you know, he's in a good form as an assistant coach. Like sometimes it's really interesting how like the stars align. And in this particular case, I feel like just this is look to the stars. Like this is just an opportunity for it all to kind of come together. And so so then we end up with our head coach and general manager in Connor Smith. And I tried to go back and tie some of the Birmingham Legion like style, and then I've listened to some of what Connor has said so far about like what he's looking to do, and I think it's like if he can emulate it, he will. But if that doesn't happen, like he's flexible and agile enough that he'll find what he needs or what he can work with based on what the club picks up. So where I wanted to ask you, and I feel like I've done way too much talking this episode, is he was a left attacking winger, didn't have a totally huge goal production, but he looked like he was really good with his speed and his ability to pull like defenders away and like provide not always like key assists, but like second pass assists in kind of the run up of goals scored. We've talked about this a couple times, and I know we'll talk about it more when we give Coach his like actual dedicated episode. What's your take on attacking minded players being soccer coaches?
I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I can recall a bunch off the top of my head. Generally it feels like, I don't have the statistics to back any of this up, but it feels like it's something more central midfielders and defenders kind of do very well at. But I haven't crunched the numbers.
You've failed at math now. You've made 2 failed math jokes, and you're supposed to be this mathematician darling. You're my numbers quant.
I forgot how.
You're my numbers quant here.
I'm getting old.
But we did talk about this before the podcast, where I have seen, and it's my theory. I guess it sounds like you kind of lean to it, or you're just leeching on it right now. But I do feel like defended-based players are the best ones to at least understand strategy and style of play, because they spend their entire career looking out, right? Like if the ball's coming at them, they're looking at how everything's configured to try to anticipate the attack. And then if they've moved the ball forward, they're just spectators like us. Like, sure, they're doing their next steps in the position, and again, part of that strategy, that formation. But then, like, their job is, most of the time, it's done. So I feel like goalkeepers and defenders, they've got to make up some of the best coaches. Whereas you get an attacking player, and they're like, I don't understand. When I was playing, I scored 1 million goals. Why can't you just go out there and be like me and score all the goals?
Just go over there, do some 6-step overs.
Yeah, just dribble around one person and shoot it, just walk it into the back of the net. It's not difficult. So I don't know.
I mean, we joke. Realistically, like, these people are all soccer players. At some point, they have played various positions throughout their career as they come up. But maybe it's something about that kind of mentality to go towards goal, that lethal striker finish that you have as an attacking player that maybe, doesn't translate well to the rest of the team.
Well, sure. And you're right. Like, I'm not saying that the coach has any kind of like deficiency because he was an attacking player, I guess. And he was an attacking wingback. So he definitely was running like up and down the field. It wasn't like just like top left corner, like, give me the ball. But I guess I'm more curious how this will manifest in his coaching style of play. Like, what kind of team will we be with an attacking minded coach, or knowing someone who knows what the USL is capable of? And I don't know if we share this. I haven't seen a lot of great defending yet in the league. Like, I don't want to say it's Sunday soccer pickup, but like there's definitely an emphasis on like
I've seen a few good
moving things
good
forward
moments, but yeah, overall it's definitely a lot more open, attacking minded style.
Yeah, like you when you see the highlights, it's usually a defender like losing pace, losing coverage. It's not in like some of the other leagues where it's just like undefendable great soccer, right? Like this is like, okay, but if this guy like man marked correctly, like he wouldn't have been able to do like a 3-step over bike.
Yeah,
like what? So to that point, I would be curious what style of play, and I hope we get to ask him, even if we don't get to set up an interview first. Like maybe hey, like talk to us about your time in Birmingham. Like let us know, like, what do you think is going to be your envision style, and like what would be your, like, this is what I need to make sure, like, are the core principles. I just hope I hope we're not a possession based team. Possession based
do you
teams
think
are
that's
so
even, do you
boring.
think that's even a thing in this league?
Don't know. But I relish team or fans that don't have to watch possession based soccer. It's just like the buildup is so much slower. It's not explosive. It doesn't produce a lot of like, oh my gosh, how did you pull that off moments.
You don't subscribe to the Tiki Taka school?
So I don't think tiki taka has to be possession entirely. Like obviously, if you're doing good tiki taka, you're possessing the ball, and I think like that's the difference in some of the quality of leagues. Like possession in crappier leagues is like, I'm just going to keep it between my defenders. I'm gonna probe up the left or right flank, and then I'm gonna bring it back, and then I'm gonna try the other way.
It's a form of defense.
Yeah,
in a way.
Oh, 100%. So, really curious to see what that kind of happens. And we're gonna totally touch more on this, but I want to make one last call out. So, Coach Kano is probably the most active on social media right now for the club. He often jokes and calls himself both the head coach, general manager, and the Rhode Island FC like merch fashion model. Nice. So I have a lot of respect. I see his posts, and like he's just a guy going around like Providence specifically, hanging out, and it's like I wonder if I've like unintentionally like ran into him, but I didn't realize at the time, or like maybe I just didn't look left at the moment, because I swear there's been times it's like I was just where he's posting, and granted that may not have been the time that he posted, but like, do you think we've had a ghost Kano encounter and we didn't know it?
Ooh, I don't know. Where does this guy hang out? Mostly Providence?
Listeners, give us your best Kano sightings and encounters. If we can find out where his favorite coffee and or lunch spot is, if he won't give me the interview, we will make this happen.
You're going to get shut down on Twitter? Kano sightings?
You've been blocked by Rhode Island FC. What do you think is Coach Kano's like go-to lunch spot? He's Bermudian. Bermudian? Yeah. Oh, man, I don't... Is it Bermudian? I'm going to say it's Bermudian. What do you think? Like, he's probably had fish and rice his entire life, right? Like, fish and goat, I think, are the things like island people have the most of in the Caribbean. So, like, do you think he just is like...
I can't say I've partaken in a lot of...
Watch, he's like vegan. He's like, I don't even eat meat, guys. Like,
maybe, I don't know.
I'm going to say he loves to frequent East Side pockets. He gets himself a nice like falafel wrap. The man dabbles in. I'm going to say it. The man dabbles in falafel.
Can you blame him?
No, it's delicious. And anyone that says otherwise, shame on you. So we were going to end the podcast with Coach Kano, but we did have this week. I'm not going to say breaking because, again, you're not going to hear this for a couple of weeks after. But we did have our newest acquisition to the club, and I think it's worth mentioning him just so that we can kind of stay on top of that and not have to rehash back. But the Rhode Island FC did get to announce the addition of assistant coach Dave McKay, who's joining us in our inaugural season. Dave McKay comes from a pretty good tenure of being both an assistant coach and like a fitness coach and performance coach for other clubs, most recently Philadelphia Union, which is where he's just recently left from. And, you know, if you look at the Union, they've been on a tear for the last couple of years under Jim Curtin. They've been doing really good things. And then he was also with Orlando City FC. And at the time, like, cause my immediate connection was like, oh, well, that's how they met probably. Like, again, because it's who you know and what you know. And so I was like, okay, well, Orlando City. But then I thought about Orlando City's track record. And while they haven't been great in the MLS, and I don't know the years yet on Coach McKay, but if he was with them during the USL run, that's when they were champions in USL. So he may have been, I don't know, but I'd like to think positively that this is also a coach who's been seeing some really excellent championship caliber players and understands what the requirements are. And I am all about having someone who's rooted in like health and like fitness and like sports physiology. I don't know if that's his like actual scientific breakout, but like I see too often clubs where people get injured because they train too hard, they train incorrectly, they do the wrong things, and then they suffer on the actual the game day when it matters. So having having a coach like this who has connections and familiarity with our group, I think this is a win across the board. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you said he's some fitness coach as well. I mean, that's pretty big. You hear a lot of like old ex-players sometimes talk about, oh yeah, we were drinking and smoking the night before. And now, as we progress further along in the sport, we see how huge of an impact it has to stay in like peak physical condition, keep away from injuries. And then these players, especially as like the game has evolved and a lot of teams are like pressing and kind of running nonstop for 90 minutes, keep the boys in shape.
Do you think that do you think fitness is actually an issue in today's age? Like, I know you just said it, so like, I don't mean to like be redundant here, but like, do you, because I think it's more injury related than it's like smoking and like eating pizza.
So,
I know you're joking, but I don't think it's also discussed a lot. Like,
it doesn't get brought up, and I think unfortunately a lot of it is, there's just not enough money in some of the leagues we have here to have access to like, all of the facilities and the people who are in charge of the nutrition and all of this stuff costs money, right? If it was that easy, you could just Google it and go like,
if it was that easy, a caveman could do it.
But like, if it was that easy, like, all of the teams would be doing it, right? They're just like, oh yeah, you just follow my 5 easy steps, guys.
Step 5, profit. I mean that's true, and we do see, but at the same, and so, man, we are out of time to talk about this tonight. But like that's one of the things I'm also curious about. Like this, back to the Brett Louie part of like, what are the things that this club is missing, or what are the things that this club can do differently that we see hamper like other clubs in the USL from being the best versions? Like what resources are you missing? Or what resources are you misallocating and misusing that are preventing you from being like the best that you can be? Like analytics and like goals expected nowadays is like the gold standard. And by the way, I'm so bummed. Remember how we were talking, like I wanted you to start like reading out the 538 like statistic projections? Mm-hmm. You have to say yes when you're on a podcast. Yeah. You can't nod your head at me.
Sorry, I didn't think you were done there.
I will point from now on, like boom. But yeah, the site is done. They shut it down. Disney bought it. They don't want to fund the sports part of it. They only want to fund the political, like who's going to be the next president part, and they have no interest in continuing soccer
rising
operations.
From the grave. He's like communist.
Well, we're not going. Hey, no politics. I just am mentioning politics because it's coming in the way of soccer statistics. So like that's a bummer, because I thought that like up until it was like 2 weeks ago they pulled the plug on it, and it's not coming back. So we just can't have nice things in America, especially soccer related.
So we just got to rely on Opta or whatever and have the dumb words at the end of their tweets.
So Sports Illustrated has like the SI index, I think, and but they go off of like power rankings and just like goal expected and like your win averages, like. So, like, yeah, okay, Man City wins the Premier League next year. Like, you don't need hard data for that. But for the USL, like, I was looking back, and there's some interesting data in there about, like, predictions and projections. And no analytics can get it right every time, because, like you said, if you did, you wouldn't need to, like, do anything. But I was really hoping we could leverage that in the seasons to come. And so, listeners, if you know of another resource maybe 538...
Maybe some soccer nerds somewhere on Reddit or something. Or
if you want the numbers. If you want to join or start your own version, like there's a need for it. So if there's anyone out there like, man, I just love data. I just want to swim in it like Scrooge McDuck at the beginning of DuckTales when he just jumps in that vault of coins, but it's just data. Like, let's invest. That's a company I'll invest in right there. I won't do the work, and I'll be an absentee founding father.
Absentee investor.
But I will encourage you from afar. So listen, we're getting off the rails. We're over our commitments. I don't want to be called a liar. So, do you got anything else that you want to get off your chest about the people that we talked about today,
or
any of the things we discussed?
That was a big info dump.
We didn't talk about the stadium like at all today. no cancellations. Well, maybe I might have made a joke in there. We gotta keep that running gag going as long as possible. But anything else?
No, I think that's you really did your investigative work there.
Anybody can copy internet articles. You just copy and then trend.
You took the time though, and that's the thing is not everyone was willing to put the time into that.
Even though like 90% of what I said I don't know if it's factual. Like we could just be leading.
It's all right. They're not checking.
Oh no!
They are.
So spoiler alert. We've already kind of quietly released the first episodes because we need to build up a certain amount of material. So like if we have to take an off week or something, and there's no like real season right now, we have something for you guys because consistency is the lifeblood of a podcast. And I released some information, and one of the very intelligent listeners in the Defiance supporters group, and everyone in Defiance has been amazing and super supportive. They found it right away. They're like, "Hey, I thought this wasn't going to come up for a few weeks." It's like, well, the cat is now out of the bag.
Dang,
so
you're getting doxxed by Defiance.
Man, they're supposed to burn other people's boats down, not my boat.
Are they standing outside across the street?
I think one of the head like capos lives in our area, so we gotta watch out for that.
Careful.
Yeah, we can't say anything. He'll swing by and be like, "I saw that magnet on your car." And so just really great group of people so far. Really been supportive, and nothing's scarier than putting yourself out there like, oh, they're gonna hate this, but the reason I brought this up is he's already corrected me several times. So listeners, if you've heard something like that ain't right, again, feel free to comment. We can only do better if you hold us accountable, but also really encourage you guys to join the Discord that the supporters group has set up. I think it's supposed to be really all for Rhode Island FC, but like it's their channel. I don't see us having another one. So highly encourage that. You can find that on like their socials, our socials. Reddit has it, I think, as well. But really great group of people, and we'll continue to try and strive to bring you accurate information that doesn't need retconning in the back end. And then final like shout out. I have to say it because it happened recently, and to the owner of like Red SUV who was at the Alexis on Fire and Avenged Sevenfold concert in Massachusetts. I just want to salute you because you wore it proud and loud, and I'm just really glad to always see a Rhode Island FC car magnet on a car. We have ours, like we rock ours, and so like I just can't wait to see more of those out in the wild.
Didn't expect to see one out in Mansfield. I mean, it's not too far, but
so it's interesting. I never expect to see it anywhere yet because we're not a club, right? So like when I do, it's like, oh, these are people that get it. These people love it.
Psychopaths like us.
But this particular one, it was really interesting, and I want to have a conversation about it, but we are at time. But I'll tease is this person was not just a Rhode Island FC fan. Like they had Revolution, they had I think Revolution Academy. Like this is a person that's rooted in
New England soccer,
and it kind of got to me like, yeah, I know about the Revs. Yeah, I follow the Revs. I enjoy what the Revs do, but like now that Rhode Island FC is here, like my love I can't have two children. Like I can only have the one.
Can't afford him, not in this economy.
I will never financially recover from having two children, right? And like I don't want to invest in the Revolution. I'll still pay attention, and if like there's an opportunity to go to a game, I'm never going to say no. I love soccer too much for that. But like my time paying attention to that is going to draw, especially for what we have to do to like make this podcast happen. So I'm really curious for the listeners, and like we'll talk about this more in the future though, is like what happens for you? Like is this a non-issue if I just brought up another pointless point because it's not going to be a thing? Like there's enough love in your heart and room for you to watch multiple like vectors of soccer? Or is this like, hey, like I've got this now, and when it comes, like I'm all in on it? Because you can say you have enough room for all soccer right now, but when we meet the Revolution in the Open Cup final, even though they'd never it'd be a semi-conference at best, right? Because it's local. But if it did, then what do? you can't say, I'm just proud. Both my babies are here. We're just here for the ride. And I'm just excited to see it happen. No, it's Rhode Island FC, or we don't want you in the group. I'm just kidding. We want you in the group. But you know what I mean. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, not to go too off on a tangent. Like I said, we're off the
tangent.
Time.
Just go through it. Just go.
But
we got a minute.
You know, I'm gonna go with the homeboys, RFC here. You know, like it's cool that the Revs are nearby, but you know, RFC all the way.
We're gonna have to discuss with the listeners at some point our Anchors Up tattoo idea. So we'll save it for later. But when you make a commitment like that, there's no room to watch any other competing soccer in the area with a tattoo of that magnitude. So to be discussed on another night. But Jason, it's been a blast as always. Where can our listeners find us?
All right, guys. We got a Twitter at RFC Podcast, Threads at RFC Podcast as well, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and as you alluded to earlier, there's a website that people found.
It works.
RaisingAnchorPodcast.com.
Hey man, a blast as always.
Yep.
Anchors up.
Anchors up.
Bye guys.
Later.